Hello, welcome into the first video of the NHL 2023-2024 regular season. So over the last couple of years with this channel, I've been dropping the odd video here and there. There's a lot of just dead points in the channel and significant ones for various reasons. This obviously is not my full-time work. It is just a hobby, but I'm hoping that I've created something here that I can do every week to create a little bit more regularity in the videos. And it's just a week in review. From Sunday to Saturday, I'll compile the information for each team's records over that 7-day period and take a few notes of just things I've noted. Some of them will be big notes, some of them will be small notes, just something that I've found. And I've broken them up to west to east so that I've got a little bit more fair coverage across things ideally. And I'm hoping that this just kind of kickstarts, like I said, more regularity with the videos. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go down the Western Conference, the points percentages, and the notes. We'll do the Eastern Conference percentages, notes, and we'll see how that goes. So to kick things off, it's Anaheim. They played one game. They lost that game in regulation. Arizona played one game. They won that game. For wins, I'm not looking at regulation and overtime. I'm just, did you get 2 points or not? Calgary, they played 2 games. They split those decisions. Chicago's played 3 games. They won their opener and then they lost the next 2. Colorado has played 2 games. They won them both. Dallas has played 1 game. They won that game. Edmonton played 2 games. They lost both of those games, and that will come up later. Los Angeles has played 2 games. They lost one in regulation. They lost one in overtime. Minnesota has played 2 games. They split those. Nashville has played 3 games. They lost 2 in regulation, and they won one. San Jose lost both of their games in regulation. Seattle has played 3 games and they only have 1 overtime point. Vancouver has played 2 games and won both of those games. That will also come up later. Vegas has played 3 games and won all 3. Winnipeg has played 2 games and split those decisions. So for the points percentage down at the bottom, and I'm likely going to correct that. At first, when I noticed it, I was like, it's whatever. It's the first video. It's going to be a little bit rough. So the points percentage is the total points percentage of teams of what was available to them. So the conference overall is at 52% of the available points across the entire conference. The Pacific is bringing up the tail far and beyond at 36.46% of points available to the teams were actually collected. The Central with a monstrous 67.71. I do expect that these are going to level back off. But yeah, so obviously being over 50% available points largely came from the Central. If I'm reading this correctly, they're the only team they're the only division in the league that had no teams that did not collect at least 1 point. So that definitely helps. So some of the notes that I made throughout the week is Vancouver outscored Edmonton 12-4 in their first 2 meetings of the season. Now, that's really good for Vancouver. Hopefully that's indicative of Rick Tocchet's systems working and that they'll be able to carry that on. Obviously, they're not expected to be a world beater, but a strong, healthy start can go a long way to trying to make the playoffs, which is ideally the goal that Vancouver is aiming for. On the flip side of that coin, Edmonton's goaltending. So that is very much up in question right now. I guess Campbell was the starter in game 1. He played about half the game, and then he got pulled for Skinner. And then Skinner played game 2 and did not show much more resolve than Campbell. So I did take a quick look. It looks like both goaltenders are registering a .750 save percentage. That is far, far too low. I expect those will balance off as they go off, but that is something that Edmonton's going to look at like really quickly and have that addressed immediately. When you've got such a competent and good forward group that contains McDavid, Draisaitl, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins down the middle, you've got wingers like Hyman and Kane available to you, and you've made the addition of Matthias Ekholm to your blue line, which does improve that blue line. The last thing you need is your goaltending falling off. One of those goaltenders is very quickly going to need to decide if they want to be the starter, or Edmonton is going to have a lot of struggles coming through the season. So Seattle has not had a good start either, and they're not looking like the same team that they were last season. So last season, there was a considerable improvement from their inaugural season. They made the playoffs, they won the first round, and they looked really good. But through their first 3 games of this season, they really have not looked good. And they've gotten outscored 9-2 in those 3 games. That is something that is going to get looked at quickly. I don't think Dave Haxtell is at risk of losing his job early in the season, but if they don't show a measurable improvement to being on pace where they were last season, I could see upper management kind of scratching the chin and going, well, maybe we need somebody else. So we'll see as the first couple of months conclude in the season. But yeah, out of the gate, I don't see a massive threat to Dave Haxtell's job, but that is not the start that they're looking for. And on the flip side of that, we have Vegas. So they've played 3 games. They've won all 3 games. But I've already seen online of people kind of throwing the quality of their opponents into a debate. And although I understand their first 3 opponents were Seattle, who was a playoff team but only made it out of the first round last year, and then San Jose and Anaheim, who are 2 teams that are expected to bring up the tail end of the Pacific Division. That's not a lot of high quality opponents. But even if they were higher quality opponents, like, say you had Tampa, the Rangers, and I don't know, Dallas for good measure, even if you had those 3 opponents, I still think Vegas likely would have pulled out at minimum a 2-1 record. So I don't think it would have made a whole lot of difference, but a lot of fans will waste no time trying to find a way to take a walk on Vegas, and I really don't think that conversation held a whole lot of weight. Also, I'm wearing the Golden Knights jersey today only because the Stanley Cup champions, I had to pick one jersey at random, so I figured why not Stanley Cup champions. So, moving on to the Eastern Conference. So, Boston picking up right where they left off, so they're a perfect 2-0-0. Buffalo is 0-2-0, and that will come up later. Carolina is 2-0-0. They've won both their games. And Columbus, Detroit, Florida Columbus and Detroit have split their 2 games. Florida has no wins. They're both regulation losses. That will come up later as well. Montreal with a pretty decent start, so they have 1 overtime loss, overtime shootout, whatever, and then they have 1 win. New Jersey split their 2 games. The Islanders, the last team to start their season, won their game. The Rangers, the Senators, the Flyers all split their first 2 games. Pittsburgh lost their opener, but they've won the last 2 games, so they're 2-1-0. Tampa Bay has split their 2 games. Toronto has won both of their games, so that's a good start that they're looking for. And Washington lost the 1 game that they've played so far in regulation, and they did not look good. So the poor start for the Buffalo Sabres is causing early concern for fans already, and understandably so. With the last how many seasons, I think it's 12 or 13, that they have not made the playoffs, seeing an 0-2-0 start will cause fans to get jumpy really quickly. I don't think there's a lot of concern. Don Granato has a lot of opportunity to get things in gear, and I don't see why they wouldn't improve and at least start showing that they want to be in that contending spot pretty early. But we'll see how things go over the next, I would say, month or so. And then much like Hackstall, I think that's where the question's going to come in. Is it a coaching issue? But with Don Granato, I don't think so. So Austin Matthews in his first 2 games have 6 goals, no assists for 6 points. Austin Matthews has always started the season strong. When I was watching the Toronto-Montreal game, the home opener for the Maple Leafs, there was a graphic that popped up that had shown he is the best season opening player in franchise history, and it's not close. I think now it's 15 points in the season opener for the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's the team he plays for. So yeah, that's not a surprise in the least, but it is noteworthy that he's got 6 points in 2 games to start. That's exactly what you want to see from your highest paid player. Washington, with only 1 game in their first week, is showing signs of a slow start. Obviously, getting shut out in their first game is not encouraging, but they were also one of the last teams to actually start their season. So I'm not surprised to see that was a less than desirable start. Lots of season over the next week or so. Over next week's review, I think we would see quite a bit of improvement and start to see signs of leveling off. But who knows? They have to play the games for us to figure that out. Florida, less than inspiring start to the season following a Stanley Cup final appearance. So ideally what Florida was hoping for was a continuation on where they left off last season, and understandably so. The thing that I do want to point out is they did very well in the playoffs, but through the regular season they were a middling team. So don't be surprised if they're not gangbusters out of the gate. But they've been outscored 8-4 in their first couple games. That is something that Paul Maurice is going to look at addressing quickly. Just like every other coach, they're seeing these things and they're going to want to knuckle down and get their systems in place. For Paul Maurice, I don't think it'll take much. I think it's just a little bit of a hangover from making the Stanley Cup final, and hopefully starting next week, they get back into form and have a much healthier start to the season, so that when they're towards the end of the season, they have a much more convincing playoff spot for them. And just to round out the Eastern Conference, I wanted to take a look at Erik Karlsson. So he does have a little bit of a slow start. That is not out of line for what happens with Karlsson when he changes teams. The last time when he went from the Ottawa Senators to the San Jose Sharks, they did see a little bit of a drop off of what we were expecting him to do. I don't think it sticks around long, but Karlsson is starting to age. And if that doesn't resolve quickly, then the Penguins may have had maybe in a buyer's remorse situation. Hopefully that doesn't happen. I may look at doing an Erik Karlsson video here in the near future, just to kind of break down and illustrate that point. But yeah, slow start. I don't think it lasts too long, but when Karlsson isn't the guy, then he doesn't play like the guy. And like I said, if I do a video, I'll illustrate that point and show what I mean. But last couple notes that aren't on the whiteboard. So Ovechkin, 0 points and 0 assists in the opener. Of course, they got shut out. Not holding too much weight in that. The only reason I made a note of that is because everybody is now going to be watching Ovechkin's goal totals like a hawk. He is still chasing Gretzky's record. I am one of those people that's of the belief it is not a matter of if, it is a matter of when. So yeah, expect people to be tracking that very closely over the next 2 seasons. Brock Boeser in Vancouver in opening night, he had 4 goals. That is a much improved start for Brock Boeser. I don't think that's going to be indicative of a career season. I could be wrong. I don't know. But I don't think that it's going to be anything hallmarky, but it could show that Brock Boeser is getting back to the form that the Vancouver Canucks are expecting and that this may be because of Tocchet systems, and we'll see what happens with him as the season rolls along. Speaking of improved players, Tyler Johnson was a player that I made a note of over the last couple days. His production to start of 2 goals, 0 assists in 3 games is a little bit encouraging. I don't think, like Brock Besser, it's going to be indicative of some miraculous turnaround or some form of a career season, but it could be indicative of him being able to reach maybe 20 goals on the season. And I would think that that's what the Chicago Blackhawks are hoping for, to bring up some of that depth scoring a little bit and help bolster the development of their core, starting with new superstar Connor Bedard, who is going to round out the video. And no, I'm not going to have every video featuring Connor Bedard, but I did want to make a note of his first few games in the NHL. He's at a point per game with 1 goal, 2 assists, and he looks good. I don't see the generational effect yet, which first few games I am not going to be one of those people to write off a first overall pick 3 games into the season. Seeing the sound bites in the interviews that Connor Bedard is in, there are a few things that I've noticed that are encouraging for his first year of development. One, he has identified and acknowledged already the massive difference between being the world beater in the WHL versus being the first overall pick in the NHL. And I hope that he remembers that through his first season and allows himself the patience to develop the way he can and have a much healthier and robust result at the end of the season. At a point per game, I think that's where he's going to land at the end of the season. Between 80 and 85 points, I don't think is unreasonable. I wouldn't be surprised if he hit 30 goals. I could be wrong. But most players, when they come into the NHL, don't score 4 goals in their first game. They don't score 100 points in their first season. Those are very unique things to happen. Not everybody's a Matthews, a McDavid, Crosby, an Ovechkin. McDavid's a little bit of an asterisk in there because he got hurt his first season, so that obviously brought his first season's point totals down. But yeah, in your first year, you're not going to hit 100 points in all likelihood. Again, if he's a point per game, I would say that'd be a win for Connor Bedard. He has seen the ins and outs, and he's quickly starting to see what he needs to work on. Faceoffs is one of those things. I didn't hold a whole lot of weight in the first game because his faceoff opponent was Sidney Crosby for most of the game. You're likely going to get schooled in your first NHL game if that's who you're taking faceoffs against. But over the next couple games, it is showing something that he will need to work on, but it's nothing extravagant. He'll get there. And also Chicago could do to bolster that train of thought a little bit. In the Chicago-Montreal game, I did notice Chicago was spending a lot of time feeding him the puck to their own detriment. That is a player that for their entire season, their opponent is going to be very aware of when Bedard is on the ice. And if they don't find a way to spread that out and take some of the focus off of him throughout a game, then that's going to hamper his ability to be productive. So, yeah, just a couple things I made a note of. A good start, not a hallmarky start, but very good, lots to build on. I do think that he will become the player everyone expects by the end of the season, but out of the gate, not the fastest start. It's not the end of the world, I promise. But watch all the news articles, just explode about it and have your entertainment with it. But that being said, that's what I have for the first week of review in the NHL. If you did like this video, please drop a like. If you really liked it, don't forget to subscribe on your way out if you have not already. And let me know down in the comments, what do you think is going to happen with these teams? Was there anything I didn't make a note of that you would like to make a note of? Do you have one or more teams that you cheer for? How do you feel about the start of their season? Always let me know. I do like to read those comments and see everybody else's perspective. And until the next time, thank you and all the best.